The clink of silverware against porcelain plates filled the tense silence of our dining room. My husband Rick sat stone-faced at the head of the table, avoiding eye contact as usual these days. Bennett, his son from his first marriage, shot me an awkward smile before focusing on his meal. "So, Harper's pregnant," Bennett blurted out between bites. Rick's fork clattered against his plate. "What did you say?" His voice was low, almost a growl. Bennett shrank in his chair. Yeah. Harper's having a baby. We're, having a baby." The corners of Rick's mouth twitched downward as his face flushed crimson. I swear I could see the vein in his forehead throbbing. He opened his mouth to speak, but seemed to think better of it, shoving his chair back and storming out of the room without a word. Bennett and I sat in stunned silence, listening to Rick's stomping footsteps fade down the hallway. The loud slam of our bedroom door made me jump. "Geez, I thought he'd be happy," Bennett muttered, stabbing at his food. "Isn't that what dads want, grandkids?" I shot him a weak smile, doing my best to mask my confusion and hurt. I'm sure he's just surprised, sweetheart. Give him some time." As if this family needed any more turmoil. We'd been growing apart for months now, longer if I'm being honest with myself. The late nights at work, the tension lingering after our rare conversations. But a grandchild should have been happy news, right? After finishing my meal in silence, I gathered the dishes and headed for the kitchen. The muffled thump of something heavy hitting the wall made me pause outside our bedroom door. Rick's gravelly voice pierced the thin wood, laced with venom. "That stupid little whore. How could she let this happen?" My breath caught in my throat. Was he talking about Bennett's fiancée? "Well, there's only one way to handle this." He growled. "It'll be expensive, but that brat's not going to ruin my life." I felt the blood drain from my face as realization crept in. No, he couldn't mean what I thought. Not my husband. Not the man I loved. But as the hushed conversation carried on in harsh tones, a pit formed in my stomach. The man I trusted, the father figure to Bennett, was discussing getting rid of his own grandchild. My arms trembled as I slid to the floor, dishes clattering beside me. Tears blurred my vision, but I blinked them away with shaky breaths, steeling myself. My husband's true nature was finally revealed. This perfect family was just a facade. His facade. One I'd allowed myself to buy into despite all the warning signs. The late nights, the unexplained expenses, his explosive temper. How could I have been so blind? White-hot anger burned away my sorrow. No more. I wouldn't let this treachery continue, not while an innocent life hung in the balance. Resolved, I picked myself up off the floor, shoving the dishes aside. Let the mask drop. My husband's web of lies was unraveling. Whether Rick liked it or not, I was going to fight for this family. I didn't bother knocking before throwing open our bedroom door. Rick spun around, eyes wide like a cornered animal. "You lying, cheating bastard," I snarled, fists clenched at my sides. His expression morphed from shock to rage in an instant. "What did you call me?" "You heard me." I took a step closer, fury washing over me in waves. "I know about your affair with Harper, about how you want to get rid of Bennett's baby." A cruel smirk twisted Rick's lips. "Ah, so you finally dragged your head out of the sand." He met my glare steadily. "About damn time. How could you?" I choked out. "Your own son, your own grandchild." Rick's laughter was bone-chilling. "That little brat was a mistake, just like marrying a whiny, self-righteous shrew like you." My palms stung from the force of the slap before I even registered moving. Rick recoiled, one hand covering his reddened cheek as his eyes bored into me. "You're going to regret that," he hissed through gritted teeth. So much for the loving husband facade. This was the real Rick, a cruel, selfish monster. I should have seen it years ago, but I was too blinded by the illusion he created. Rick lunged forward, grabbing a fistful of my hair and yanking me toward him. Panic seized my chest as his alcohol-laced breath washed over my face. "Maybe I should get rid of you too," he snarled. "Put you out of your misery, like a sick dog." Hot tears sprang in my eyes, but I refused to cry, refused to show weakness. Some deep, primal part of me had awoken, filling me with a cold, bitter resolve. Rick released his grip, shoving me aside roughly. I stumbled back a few steps as he grabbed a crystal tumbler from the dresser, tossing back a mouthful of amber liquid. "What, you got nothing else to say?" He sneered, swirling the glass. "Think you can just walk all over me in my own house?" "Your house." I repeated incredulously. In case you forgot, jackass, I paid for this place with my salary, while you blew money on who knows what. Rick laughed again, deep and mocking. You naive little fool, don't act so high and mighty, like I haven't been funding your pathetic existence all these years. What are you talking about? I demanded through gritted teeth. Your clinic, your so-called mobile health unit, all that selfless savior bullshit. He took another swig, sloshing liquid over the rim. You think insurance paid for that, or your pitiful nursing wages? A cold chill swept over me as Rick's words sank in. He couldn't mean. Could he? I've been taking money from your accounts for years, paying my own way, and that little slut Harper's too. Rick shrugged nonchalantly. What, you think I actually loved you? That this was a real marriage? Every word was like a dagger in my heart. My entire life, my sense of self and worth, it had all been built on his lies and deception. In that moment, it felt like my world was crumbling all over again. It took every ounce of willpower not to completely fall apart after Rick's admission. As he ranted and raved, gulping down glass after glass of scotch, I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. Getting hysterical would only give him more satisfaction. No, I needed to stay calm. Focused. Start gathering the evidence to take this bastard down. The moment Rick passed out in a drunken stupor, I crept out of the room and down the hall to the study. My hands trembled as I fired up his computer, locating his account files with shaking breaths. Line after line of withdrawals and transfers leapt off the screen, each one like a slap in the face. Tens of thousands siphoned from my savings and retirement over the years, all to fund Rick's sham of a life. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them away furiously, clenching my jaw. He would pay for this. I would make sure of it. Images and documents scattered across the desktop caught my eye. Plane tickets to Aruba, reservation confirmations at luxury resorts, bank statements for an offshore account in Harper's name. My heart pounded as I pieced together the sordid paper trail. That deceitful, lying prick had been robbing me blind for years to bankroll his sick little tryst. Fury boiled in my veins, blurring my vision. How many times had he taken that whore on lavish getaways while I slaved away extra shifts at the hospital just to keep our heads above water? The urge to upend Rick's desk in a fit of rage nearly overwhelmed me. But no, I needed to be smart about this. Methodical. I ejected a blank USB drive from the computer and began copying every incriminating file in a daze, my teeth clamped so tightly my jaw ached. You're finished, I vowed under my battered breath as the files transferred one by one. I'll make you pay if it's the last thing I do. First, I needed help, a level head to guide me through dismantling Rick's lies and bringing him down legally. I couldn't trust the dimwits in the local police force as far as I could throw them. No, for a deadly serious situation like this, I needed someone I could trust implicitly. Someone hungry to take down a scumbag like Rick before he ruined more innocent lives. The answer hit me like a freight train. Marcus. My oldest friend, Marcus Flynn. We'd known each other since we were kids. Years of shared history, tears, laughter. When my dad passed away, Marcus was the only person who could pull me out of my grief. He was strong, driven, with an unshakable moral compass. And, oh yeah, he just happened to be a highly decorated detective, too. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and tapped out a message. Marcus, it's Lila. I'm in trouble, and I need your help. Can you come over? His reply was instant. On my way. I exhaled slowly, feeling a glimmer of hope flicker in the pit of my churning stomach. If anyone could help me bring Rick's sordid empire crumbling down, it was Marcus. He was the only one I could truly trust. As I pocketed the USB of evidence, my mind flashed to Bennett. Poor, unsuspecting Bennett. I couldn't bear to watch him suffer the same gut-wrenching betrayal I had. No, for his sake, I'd make sure Rick faced the consequences discreetly. Whatever it took, that lying, cheating bastard's reign of terror was over, once and for all. Marcus arrived in record time, his brow creased with concern. Before he could even open his mouth, I ushered him inside and down the hall to the study, my heart thudding. What's going on, Lila? He asked quietly as I shut the door behind us. You look like you've seen a ghost. I drew a shaky breath, mustering what little composure I had left. Rick has been lying to me, for years. Marcus's eyes narrowed, but he remained silent, waiting for me to continue. With trembling hands, I unspooled every sordid detail. Rick's affair with Bennett's fiancée Harper, his plans to force an abortion, the money trail of theft and deception. By the time I finally trailed off, Marcus's jaw was tightly clenched, a muscle twitching. "That lying, cheating son of a bitch," he muttered through gritted teeth. He met my gaze, his expression softening slightly. "I'm so sorry, Lila. You didn't deserve any of this." I shook my head mutely, too drained to muster a response. After taking the USB drive from my outstretched hand, Marcus began scrolling through the files, his frown deepening with each piece of damning evidence. "We've got him dead to rights," Marcus finally said, looking up at me intently. "Between the money trail, the travel records, Harper's testimony, I can take this scumbag down." I felt a rush of relief, quickly quashed by a nagging thought. But what about Bennett? This would destroy him. He's going to find out the truth eventually. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Better he hears it from you in a controlled setting." "No." The word burst forth before I could rein it in. "I can't put him through that hell, Marcus." "Not yet." Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off with a pleading look. "Please, let me handle this my own way, at least at first, for his sake." He eyed me carefully for a long moment before giving a curt nod. "All right, we'll play it your way initially. What did you have in mind?" I chewed my lip, wheels turning. "We need Harper to testify? Get her on our side?" I trailed off, pondering our next move. "Leave that to me," Marcus said grimly. "I know just how to make her sing like a canary." I suppressed a shudder, not wanting to dwell on what that entailed. As despicable as Harper's actions were, the thought of her enduring the same torment I had made my stomach churn. An idea sparked in my mind, rapidly taking shape. If we can get her on board, turn her against Rick with hard evidence, we could take him down without implicating Bennett at all. Make it seem like we're just going after Rick for the financial crimes. Marcus considered this for a moment before giving a curt nod of agreement. "Could work. I'll take care of Harper, get her on our side officially. And I'll keep up appearances for now," I said with an air of resolve. "Let Rick go on thinking everything is normal until we can move in for the checkmate." A grim smile tugged at the corner of Marcus's mouth. "Like taking a scalpel to a tumor. Precise and calculating. I like it." His words lit a fire in my belly, burning away the last of my fear and dread over the situation. Marcus was right. It was time to go on the offensive against Rick, to fight back with cold, exacting precision. No more games, no more empty promises or passive suffering. "Good," I stated firmly. "Then we have a plan, and one way or another I'll make that bastard pay his dues." We shook hands, sealing our pact. A new chapter was beginning, one of rage, retribution, and ultimately long overdue justice. After all Rick had put me through, all the hurt and anguish and betrayal, he was about to learn just how merciless a vengeful, scorned woman could be. For 2 agonizing weeks, I played the role of the oblivious, devoted wife to perfection. Each fake smile, each empty pleasantry through gritted teeth only fueled my simmering rage. Rick remained clueless, prancing around like he'd gotten away with the ultimate heist. The arrogant prick even had the audacity to flaunt his affair, leaving for business trips with that little tramp Harper every few days. All according to plan. When Marcus finally gave me the signal, I felt a dark sense of satisfaction wash over me. Showtime. I agreed to meet Rick at a swanky bistro downtown after his return from yet another illicit rendezvous. As we waited for our drinks, I watched him preen and posture, utterly convinced he'd beaten me into submission. The smug bastard had no idea what was coming. "You seem awfully chipper," I commented lightly, keeping my expression neutral. Rick's lips curled into a lazy smirk. "What can I say, dear? I'm a man reborn." He chuckled to himself. "No more burdens, no more dead weight dragging me down." I clenched my jaw, riding out a wave of white-hot fury. "Stay calm," I reminded myself. Let him keep digging his grave. "In fact," Rick continued airily, "I've been meaning to discuss some things with you, about the future and all that." "Such as?" I prompted, keeping my tone conversational. Rick's grin widened as he leaned across the table. "Well, for starters, I'd like to discuss getting a divorce. An amicable one, of course. I'm not a monster." A bark of laughter punctuated his words. "We can divide up assets like rational adults. I'd plan to be generous, considering your disadvantages." My heart thudded, but I forced myself to remain stoic. My disadvantages? No need to play coy. Rick waved a hand dismissively. We both know I'm the real breadwinner in this family. All those little hobby projects of yours, the clinic, health van, that would have fallen apart years ago if not for me. A low chuckle rumbled up from my chest. Is that so? Rick's brow furrowed slightly at my reaction, but his patronizing smirk remained. Yes, well, I think it's time we... Save it. I cut him off sharply. I'm not interested in your pathetic little settlement offers. Anger flashed across Rick's features before he regained his composure. Now, let's not be hasty. The only one being hasty was you. I stared him dead in the eye, acid dripping from each word. Thinking you could lie, cheat, steal, and pay your way out of consequences. His face drained of color. What are you talking about? I know everything, Rick. I leaned forward, keeping my voice low and venomous. About the money you siphoned from me to fund your twisted tryst with that whore Harper. About how you plan to force an abortion on your own grandchild. Rick's mouth worked soundlessly, grasping for a response. But there was no way out. I had him cornered. You're finished, I hissed with finality. The evidence has been collected, testimony secured. Your day of reckoning is here. As if on cue, Marcus appeared behind Rick, his face set in a grim mask. Richard Harrison, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and domestic abuse. Rick recoiled in shock, eyes bulging as Marcus recited his rights. When he turned back to me, his expression was one of pure, unadulterated hatred. You crazy bitch, he snarled, struggling against Marcus's restraints. I'll make you pay for this, you hear me? I'll take everything from you. I simply watched, unmoved, as Rick was forcibly dragged away, his threats and curses echoing through the restaurant. As the doors swung shut behind him, a wave of something I hadn't felt in years washed over me. Peace. There would still be messiness. Lawyers, divorce proceedings, uprooting my life yet again. But in that moment, it all felt extraordinarily trivial. Rick's reign of terror and deception was over. Justice, sweet justice, had been served. And I, the meek, downtrodden wife he'd so mercilessly trampled, I was the one who'd brought him to his knees. All the pain, the betrayal, the sleepless nights of torment. In the end, it had all been worth it to witness the bastard's downfall. My phoenix moment had arrived. The courthouse was packed to the rafters, a veritable media circus, thanks to the lurid details of Rick's crimes being leaked. I spotted more than a few familiar faces from the neighborhood gawking shamelessly. So much for discretion. Rick himself looked ashen and haggard, a shadow of his former pompous self. His gaze skittered away from mine as I took my seat in the front row, back ramrod straight. Let him feel the weight of the community's disdain. He deserves that and more. Marcus squeezed my shoulder reassuringly as the bailiff called the room to order. Stay strong, he murmured. I gave an imperceptible nod, drawing in a stealing breath. After all the lies, the betrayal and torment, it was time to watch Rick's world crumble. One by one, the witnesses took the stand. Financial advisors, private investigators, even a few of Rick's former business associates. Their damning testimonies painted a lurid portrait of greed, manipulation, and wanton treachery. The sheer scope of Rick's depravity made my head spin. It came as no surprise when he was found guilty on all charges: embezzlement, fraud, domestic abuse. And yet, a vindictive part of me still savored the way the blood drained from his face as the verdict was read. I was up next, bracing myself as I took the stand. Up close, Rick's eyes were sunken, rimmed with dark circles, the eyes of a man already defeated. But still, that same toxic arrogance simmered behind his glare as our eyes met, a silent promise of vengeance if I dared speak out against him. Mrs. Harrison, the prosecutor prompted gently, in your own words, can you describe your relationship with the defendant? A bitter chuckle escaped my lips before I could restrain it. My relationship? I turned my gaze to meet Rick squarely. That's a pretty weighted term to describe the hell he put me through. Objection! Rick's attorney sputtered, leaping to his feet, non-responsive and argumentative. The judge silenced him with a withering look. I'll allow it. Please continue, Mrs. Harrison. For a span of aching heartbeats, the courtroom held its collective breath. I could sense the weight of judgment pressing in from all sides, awaiting my testimony. Steeling myself, I began to recount the sordid tale. The money trail of theft and deception, the mental and emotional abuse, the outrageous affair with my stepson's fiancée. Each agonizing detail poured from my lips with startling clarity, as if the wounds had been reopened anew. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Bennett flinch as I recounted learning of Harper's pregnancy. Poor kid. At least he'll be spared the worst of it. By the time I finished, not a sound could be heard in the courtroom, save for the occasional hushed murmur or throat clearing. The weight of Rick's betrayal seemed to have stunned the masses into silence. Except for Harper, I noticed Riley. She sat in the rear of the gallery, chin raised defiantly as she met Rick's withering glare. At least I'd have that, the satisfaction of knowing I wasn't the only one to yank the rug out from under that smug prick. "Thank you, Mrs. Harrison," the judge said at last, clearing his throat brusquely. "You may step down." With a curt nod, I vacated the stand, allowing myself one final withering glance at the broken husk of the man I once loved. The self-righteous arrogance that had once radiated from Rick in waves was nowhere to be found, only a pitiful shell of shame and defeat. His day in the sun was over, and it was all his own doing. An odd sense of melancholy washed over me then, startling in its intensity. So much pain, so much wasted time and effort, all for his selfish desires and fragile ego. If only he'd been capable of loyalty, of integrity. Maybe then none of this would have happened. But those ponderings were for another time. For now there was only resolution, finality, as the judge returned to deliver Rick's sentencing. Heavy fines and asset seizures. Prison time. Decades of it. Every meaningful piece of the life he'd so carefully constructed, every ill-gotten prize he prized, ripped away, one by one. As the bailiffs led Rick away in shackles, I felt the first inklings of a strange new emotion blossoming in my chest. Lighter than the bitterness and rage, yet somehow deeper, woven through with wisdom hard-earned. Liberation. I was shrugging off the shackles of Rick's betrayal at long last, ready to begin anew. And this time, the path forward was of my own making. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly civil, all things considered. With Rick facing hard prison time and the bulk of his assets seized, he had little recourse to contest. Not that I would have allowed him to squirm his way out of taking responsibility. Our decree was finalized quickly and quietly, no dramatic courtroom showdowns or underhanded delays. Just 2 signatures scrawled onto documents, officially untying the knot. I can't say I felt any sense of sadness or heartache as I inked my name, just resignation, release, the closing of one tumultuous chapter, and the prospect of beginning anew. It helped that I wasn't alone this time. "You ready for this?" Marcus appeared in the doorway, hands tucked casually in his pockets. Always the steady presence, my rock through the whole sordid affair. I let out a slow exhale, rolling my shoulders back. More than ready. It's time to leave the past behind for good. A ghost of a smile played across Marcus's lips as he gave a slow nod of understanding. Funny how just his familiar presence could instill such a sense of tranquility. After the chaos and torment, having an ally I could truly trust was invaluable. With the RL&C offices in our rear view, an odd giddiness took hold, a sense of weightlessness, like awakening from a fevered dream. The future was finally unwritten, ripe with possibilities. Over celebratory pancakes at our favorite diner, I couldn't stop stealing sidelong glances at Marcus, committing every laugh line and crinkle to memory. He really was devilishly handsome when he wasn't weighed down by the job, I mused. Our eyes met over the table, twin sparkles of mischief dancing there. "What?" I teased. "Something on my face?" Marcus chuckled, low and warm. "No, just hadn't seen you look so carefree in ages. It's nice." I felt heat creeping up my neck at the unexpected compliment, but didn't look away. There was no need to hide or deflect anymore, not with Marcus. "Well, get used to it, detective. The shackles are off now." An undeniable spark of chemistry crackled between us, one I didn't feel the need to resist or dwell on overanalyzing. Not now, maybe not ever. We'd have time to explore whatever this was. For the first time in forever, the path forward was my own to forge. The days and weeks ahead passed by in a contented blur. I sold the home Rick and I had shared, cashed out what assets I could recover, and began making plans. Plans for a fresh start, a new life, one firmly in my control and tailored to my passions. One that rejected the trappings of greed and ego that had poisoned Rick's soul. The thought of channeling my life's work into helping others, providing care and compassion to the underserved and overlooked, set my heart alight with purpose. Marcus proved instrumental in turning my dreams into reality. Using a portion of my settlement fund, He helped me secure a property in a low-income urban neighborhood, prime territory for establishing a health clinic and community outreach center. "You're really going all in on this, huh?" He commented as we pored over zoning permits one evening, highballs in hand. I shot him a wry look over my glasses. "You sound surprised. This is what I was born to do, Marcus. Make a real difference in people's lives." "No, I know." He held up placating hands, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "Just an observation. You've got that fire in your eyes again, that sense of purpose. It's admirable." I felt my cheeks warm at the praise, suddenly grateful for the stack of paperwork shielding us. Focus, Lila. As the clinic took shape, a refurbished space brimming with warmth and cleanliness, I poured every ounce of my energy and passion into crafting the ideal care environment. Spacious examination rooms, a welcoming reception area, even a small playroom for the kids. The grand opening was a modest local affair, but one that filled me with immense pride nonetheless. Watching those first few families trickle in, faces alight with wonder and relief at having access to affordable health care, it made all the pain and turmoil feel worth it. From the depths of rock bottom, I'd forged an incredible new path, one centered on healing, compassion, and investing in my community. This sense of purpose, this drive to make the world just a little bit better, it was an intoxicating feeling. As I surveyed the bustling clinic, Marcus appeared at my side, eyes shining with what looked like pride. "You pulled it off," he murmured, giving my arm an affectionate squeeze. "You really did it, Lila. Made something incredible out of the ashes." Our gazes locked, and I knew in that moment with crystalline clarity, this journey of rebirth and redemption was just the beginning. Whatever came next, Marcus would be by my side, walking the path alongside me. I could feel it in my bones. Which is why, when our lips met in a lingering, soulful kiss, it felt more right than anything else in this crazy world. A new chapter was finally beginning, and I had never felt more hopeful or alive. The months following Rick's sentencing passed in a whirlwind of personal and professional triumphs. My clinic took off in ways I'd only dreamed, becoming a vital community resource seemingly overnight. On the home front, things with Marcus progressed at a simmering yet steady pace. We'd fallen into an unspoken rhythm, often spending nights together without needing to put lofty labels on it. Whatever this thing between us was, we were content to let it unfurl organically, which made his unexpected question one lazy Sunday morning all the more rattling. "Have you given any thought to expanding?" Marcus murmured, idly tracing patterns over my bare back. "You know, broadening your clinic's reach? Maybe a mobile health van or something?" I rolled over to face him, brows raised. "You're joking, right? Those cost a fortune to get off the ground, not to mention operational costs." Marcus simply grinned that maddening, lopsided grin. "Well, lucky for you, I happen to know someone who has access to a pretty sizable fund." My heart stuttered in my chest as the implication sank in. The restitution money from Rick. He gave a casual shrug, eyes sparkling. "You did put a sizable dent in that asshole's pockets. May as well use some of that ill-gotten gain to do some good in the world, right?" I worried my lower lip, momentarily transported back to those first hazy dreams of providing health care to the underserved masses. A mobile clinic to reach those unable to make it to my brick-and-mortar location could be a game-changer. But utilizing Rick's money, even by proxy, to make it happen. Something about that felt distastefully full circle. "Marcus, I don't know," I sighed, raking my fingers through my hair. "Logistically, it could work, but using that dirty money..." I trailed off, actively regretting bringing my morale hang-ups into the bedroom. To my surprise, he reached out to still my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Hey, none of that," he chided gently. "You're not using anything ill-gotten. That prick owed a debt, and this is your way of collecting on it, by doing some good in the world on his dime." I opened my mouth to protest further, but Marcus shook his head firmly. He can sit in that concrete shithole and stew for the rest of his days. This is you rising above it all, Lila, being the better person and focusing on what really matters. My breath hitched at the sudden intensity blazing in his eyes. In that moment, I would have agreed to damn near anything Marcus proposed, legal or not. Which is how, over the following weeks, I found myself diving headlong into developing a fully licensed, state-of-the-art mobile health initiative. funded entirely through Marcus's deft finagling with Rick's remaining assets, all while keeping my own hands relatively clean. The launch event for the inaugural Hope Mobile was a media spectacle that still makes me chuckle in hindsight. Every local news station jockeying for FaceTime with the resilient Afghan war widow spearheading such a noble cause. Truth was, despite my protests, Marcus had spun my backstory into a compelling narrative for the public, one he knew would draw maximum goodwill and donation support, all without my input or consent. "You crafty son of a bitch," I growled through a steely grin as the cameras finally stopped rolling. "This was your plan all along, wasn't it? Using me as a prop for the big heroic widow PR push?" Marcus at least had the good grace to look slightly abashed as he stepped closer, tugging the lapels of my blouse. "Would you have let me pitch the funding request for the van any other way?" he countered, lips quirking upwards. I opened my mouth to argue, but quickly clamped it shut, thinking better of it. He had me there. If Marcus came at me with a straightforward, take the dirty money approach, I likely would have balked purely on principle, spinning it into a noble, inspirational story of overcoming tragedy and aiding the underserved, however. Well, he knew I wouldn't be able to resist that particular pull on my heartstrings. "You're lucky I love you," I grumbled half-heartedly, delivering a light smack to his chest. Marcus simply grinned wider, hauling me into a searing kiss that emptied what few qualms still lingered from my mind. Damn it, if he didn't render me utterly helpless with that stupid, cocksure grin. In the end, amidst the endless flurry of media appearances, interview requests, and new patient inquiries, only one moment stood out with crystal clarity. The expression of awestruck disbelief on Bennett's face as I presented him with the mobile clinic's operational keys during our first official family visit. This is beyond incredible," he stammered, eyes shining with unshed tears. "You're really going to be bringing healthcare to the people? Serving the underserved?" I simply smiled, giving his shoulder an encouraging squeeze. "Your father's misdeeds inadvertently made this all possible. I figured it was only right to use that poisoned fruit to grow something positive, something truly impactful." Bennett exhaled a quavering breath, his eyes speaking volumes. After the shock and devastation he'd endured with Harper's betrayal and Rick's stunning fall from grace, finally witnessing some good manifested from that anguish seemed to lift a great weight. As he silently pulled me into a fierce hug, unspoken understanding and gratitude flowing between us, I knew in my soul that the long, painful road had finally reached its destination. Out of the darkness and into the light, Rick's wrath had only forged me into a better, more driven version of myself. Justice had been served, yes, but something even sweeter had blossomed in its wake: redemption.